The sixth and final tournament of the 2025 Sumo year is upon us. We have two Yokozuna that have been giving it their all. We have a Rising Sekiwake on Ozeki watch, and we've got a whole bunch of Maegashira that are either battling injuries, trying to make a name for themselves, or outright changing their name. We'll talk about it today on the New to Sumo podcast.
Let's start the show. New to Sumo, here we go.
Before we start, we just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode and all of our past episodes. If you like this content and want more, feel free to like, subscribe, and comment, and we will answer as many questions as you have as we possibly can. Now, we have the November tournament in Kyushu, starting in just a couple of days. Our reigning champion, who has won 3 of the last 5 tournaments, is none other than our Yokozuna 1 East Onosato. And he won that tournament back in September, for those who need a recap, in a playoff against his new arch nemesis, Yokozuna 1 West Hoshoryu.
Oh boy, do these two hate each other. Oh man, the rivalry's really been heating up. If anyone saw pictures and video from the trip to London that they just had recently, these two are buddies outside of the ring. I mean, I love the idea of the competitive rivalry between the two of them, but I just don't believe for 1 second that these two have any kind of personal grudge or whatever. They both want to win. I mean, they're both fierce competitors, but these two are having a blast in London. They're eating hot dogs together. I got some of that stuff in the thumbnail, hopefully. I love these two guys. I think that they're just such great counterparts, like modern Yokozunas, I think, for an era where it takes a certain kind of personality to really popularize the sport and keep it relevant. These two are kind of perfect fits for that job. Because they are serious about their craft and about the sport, but also they can just have fun and take some great pictures for the media, and they seem like they're enjoying themselves and enjoying the sumo life, and I think it's a really great advertisement for it. And I think that's what we saw in a lot of the London sumo trip.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we now have two Yokozuna that are coming off arguably their best, well, certainly their best tournament, when they were both on it at the same time, because, Hoshoryu's, I think, missed 2 of 4. But, just for both of them to be not only giving it their all, but giving us like a real spectacle at the end of the last tournament, I think it really shows that certainly the short-term future of sumo is in a very bright place. We've got Onosato, who's already surpassed his own Yokozuna master in number of championships. You've got Hoshoryu, who is, still sort of chasing Onosato for every championship, but finally seems to, when he's healthy, being able to put up those big performances. And, I didn't hear anything about any sort of injury aggravation over, the last month or so. So I have no reason to believe that he won't be able to make it through, this tournament, barring something happening mid-tournament. So I'm excited to see our two Yokozuna going at it again in on the 15th day, and maybe even twice on that Saturday/Sunday, depending on where you live.
Yeah, I'd love to see them do it again. Honestly, the last tournament was so exciting, and there's just something special about seeing the two up against each other in the final day, and that playoff was really amazing. Although, albeit a little bit controversial for some who were questioning the decision, the lack of Mono E on the final day. But most importantly, I mean, these two are just amazing. And when you talk about Hoshoryu and his injury record, I mean, it's worth noting that the tournaments that he finished, he's putting up excellent records. So it's very likely that it was legitimate each time that he was dropping out of the tournaments. He really was just suffering with some health issues, and I just hope that he can stay healthy for the next many tournaments because I love seeing a fully fit Hoshoryu and a fully fit Onosato.
Yeah,
Knock on
they're
wood, Onosato hasn't had the same issues yet, but it's inevitable. People are going to have injuries at some point.
I mean, we like to rib, Hoshoryu a lot, just because of the injuries. But I mean, the proof is truly in the pudding. Like his last 4 tournaments that he has managed to complete, he has given Yokozuna worthy performances.
100%. 12 or
13
13 wins, every single one of those. Yep.
I mean, this tournament last year was at that time his best tournament ever. His 13-2 Junyusho, which he, lost to Kotozakura. More on that guy in a bit. And then to follow that up with his second Yusho, then the injury hits. Then he comes back with a 12-3 in May, another injury, and then, I'd almost argue that his tournament in September was the best one of his whole career, because it's not like his losses came to nobodies. Like Aonishki is probably an Ozeki on the ascent,
Hmm.
and Hirata Umi is a guy that can beat virtually anybody
Well,
except
he
maybe
he he didn't lose
Onosato.
to Hiradomi. He
Oh,
lost to
sorry.
Kotozakura.
Yeah, Kota. Oh, in the last tournament. Oh my gosh, you're right. It was Kota Sakura in the last one. So yeah, so that's two Ozeki, and those are
Yep.
Ozeki caliber guys. Like those are guys who a Yokozuna is quote unquote allowed to lose to over the course of a tournament. So the future's bright for both of them, but there are 40 other guys that we do have to at least allude
Yes.
to. So
Let's
we gotta stop glazing these don't we gotta stop glazing these guys for a second
okay.
and talk
Sure.
about the
Well,
others.
we mentioned Kotozakura, who managed to beat Hoshoryu and finally had a stronger tournament in the last one, which is really what we've been asking for. I mean, he did end up bowing out a little early, but getting 9 wins, I mean, is better than what we've been seeing, and getting a win against the Yokozuna at that was refreshing.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean 9-4 in the ring plus a win over a Yokozuna is pretty good. I know a lot of people are complaining that oh, Onosato should have had to fight him. Folks, if you've watched them fight enough, you know that Onosato would have beaten a injured Kotozakura. So
Also, these are
let's
the same people that had no problem with Koto Shohu getting Koto Shohu getting a Yusho win against weaker opposition. You can only beat who's in front of you, and
Exactly. So like Kotozakura, like good to like I hope that it's not a serious injury, because I don't believe that he made it to the London trip because of it. Though I could be mistaken. I wonder if he is actually healthy for this one. We'll find out in a couple of days, and if he does go Kyujo, we will certainly update the description on any news we hear. But I haven't heard anything like super promising about his condition heading
although
into
certainly
Kyujo.
if you're making picks for Kachi Clash based on our top three competitors, injury also being a factor, I don't see why anyone would be picking Kotozakura right now. We haven't seen enough evidence that he could ever have a better tournament than our two Yokozuna right now.
Yeah,
But
I mean like he's Mr. He's Mr. 8. He was Mr. 8-7 this
for a
year.
while, yeah, for a while. And
Yeah.
that was not who he was in 2024. But hopefully he gets back to that at some point. Maybe, he just needs to continue nursing some injuries and he'll be back to it soon. I certainly hope so. And then we got to talk about the man of the hour, Onishiki, which,
The
to be
man of the
honest, we
hour,
we have spent
absolutely.
hours combined over many of our last several episodes talking about him. So I don't know how much more there is to say. Future Ozeki. Probably this tournament he's going to end up getting his Ozeki promotion. What do you think?
All there is to say about him is that, every time people say this is the level that he's finally going to get figured out, he proves them wrong. If Kotozakura is Mr. 8 wins, he is Mr. 11 wins.
Yeah.
Just 11 after 11 after 11. Like we mentioned it, I think, before the last tournament. Like he is winning at the top division at a rate that we have not seen in guys other than four Ozeki, two of which went on to become, all-time great Yokozuna.
Yeah.
So, maybe, we will once again ask the question, maybe this is the tournament where he finally levels out, but he has consistently proven us wrong. So all I'm going to say is 11 wins is likely the magic number. 12 will almost certainly guarantee that he is an Ozeki to start 2026. And if it's only 10, if it's 10, I don't think they're going to give him any special,
No.
dispensation for it. But, if it's 10, pump the brakes on the panic train, okay? Because, I believe it took the great Hakuoho like a whole lot of time for him to reach Ozeki after getting to Sekiwake at the first time. Some of the all-time greats have needed multiple tournaments in the bottom, up in like the lower Sanyaku in order to finally get Ozeki. Just be patient if he gives you a reason to feel impatient. That's all I'm gonna ask. So, moving on to a guy that nobody has any real expectations about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's Oho.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, he's the grandson of one of the greatest Yokozuna of all time, but he has also been here before, and he did not really distinguish himself at his Sekiwake debut. Weirdly enough, he is now a two-time Sekiwake, but has never been a Komusubi. So that's it. Kind of funny how he just manages to keep skipping that rank, but I mean, there's not much to say other than, anytime you have real expectations on him, he kind of lets you down a little bit. Maybe this is the one. He did have 10 and 5 of 10 and 5 record last tournament from Maegashira 2, which is pretty rock solid, and he had his best tournament ever from Maegashira 3 earlier this year. Anything and everything feels possible with this guy, but if he were to finish with like between 6 and 8 wins, like that would be the least surprising outcome to me of all. He's got the skill to beat like the lower ranked guys, but he just doesn't seem to have it to consistently beat the higher ranked guys.
Yeah, he's in that territory of the Banzuke where so many of those guys are just yo-yoing up and down. It's very rare, honestly, that people in the territory of, M1 through M5 and the lower Sanyaku are going to stay there for a long time. I mean, one of the few examples of someone who could actually hold their position in that area was Daisho, who ended up dropping down. Wakataka Kage seemed like he was going to be a staple in that position, and he hasn't dropped far after a disappointing tournament back in September, but yo-yo is just natural for this area. Oho, just to be in that zone of the Banzuke consistently is itself an accomplishment, but I don't see him being a Sekiwake stalwart like Daisho was for so long. I think probably this tournament's going to get a losing record. He's going to be back in the Maegashira. That just seems like the case for almost everybody except probably Aonishki and a few others who might bounce back up and maybe hold it a little longer, like Kirishima did. And we'll talk about him in a second.
Yep. And as for our Komusubi, Takanosho and Takayasu, I mean, they're basically the same guy. They're lovable runner-ups who I think are just maybe a little bit past the point where they can, where even if they're in Yusho contention, by the time they face the other guys that are in Yusho contention, they're just gonna be too tired, too worn out to really finish the job. These are guys that just like, maybe they'll either be in contention and then lose at the end, or be out of contention and then win a couple at the end. That's kind of what they've both been doing. And they're so injury prone that I mean Takayasu has had two losing records from Komusubi this year and has stayed in Komusubi for the last several tournaments. Like he doesn't really belong here. It's more a byproduct of just, nobody else being fit to hold the position right now. But it is what it is. We've spoken a lot about Takayasu. Like hopefully all I'll say is hopefully he completes all 15 days, because there have been times where it really looked like he would have to pull out early on.
Yeah, totally. And as always, just caveat, we would love for these guys to have great tournaments. It's always exciting, especially guys who have never won a Yusho before. I mean, we're pulling for Takanosho and Takayasu, but they're in maybe the hardest position to possibly win a Yusho from. A much more like, sorry to jump around the Banzuke, but on that topic, a much more likely person to have a surprise Yusho right now, I'm going to jump way down to Maegashira 7 and talk quickly about Abi. Because if you're talking about people like Takayasu and Takanosho having had great tournaments, the likelihood of them having a really strong showing now is very low. But Abi, who just had a weak tournament and dropped way below his usual ranking, this is someone you want to keep an eye out for. The last time he had a ranking below M3, he won, I believe, 12 matches. The time before that, he won the Yusho. So this is a spot where Abi can do some serious damage. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the Abi is like I don't know if Abi is going to wind up winning simply because he's gonna at some point he's gonna have to, he's probably gonna have to face Onosato
Yes.
with a title on the line. That being said, I will virtually guarantee that whoever you want to win the U show, Abi is going to spoil them
Yes,
because
absolutely. That's what he's best
because
at.
he is the Dark Frog Lord of Chaos. Like anytime that you want him, you want someone to beat him, he's going to beat them. Anytime you want him to win, something funky is going to happen. So this is a great, assuming he's completely healthy and that last tournament was just an aberration. This is a moment where he can really shine because it isn't even just like going below like Maegashira 5. Like the last few times he's gone simply below Maegashira 2, he's had like really, really strong showings. He
Yep.
won his first and only U show from M9. He had like a bunch of Jun U shows from, Maegashira 6 and 15. Like this is a guy that, is maybe just a little too smart, combined with his incredible skill to really lose to the kinds of guys he's going to be facing in the first 10 or so days. Like he might not even have to face a Sanyaku until like the final 5 days or so. So going to be a very strong guy to watch. But let's not let's head back up because we do
Yes.
have a bunch of other guys to remark on. Hakuoho, career high at Maegashira 1, still has never had a losing record when he has competed in all 15 days. So, if that trend continues, he could finally be a Sanyaku to start next year.
Absolutely. If he can break the 8 and 7 obsession, then especially that would be really promising for his future in that area. But hey, getting 8 and 7 at M1 is not easy. Getting 8 and 7 at a higher rank than that is also very difficult. So if he just keeps that going, that would be pretty special in its own right. Not everyone needs to be pushing for Ozeki at all times. It's actually very hard for multiple people to do it at once. So would love to see something like that from him, or just keep the winning records going, or stay up in this area. Most importantly, stay healthy, Hakuoho. And then Wakataka Kage. Uh, we said plenty about it in the recap from the last tournament. So disappointing that his entire Ozeki run is completely reset with the last performance. He's going to have to start in this tournament with a strong record and keep it going for two more to have any chance of Ozeki promotion anytime soon.
Yeah, even assuming he does have a great performance in this tournament, we won't really be talking about him in any, Ozeki connotation until March at the absolute earliest. So just, stay healthy, do your job, and, Wakataka Kage, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And the same goes for Kirishima. I mean, this is a guy that has even though he hasn't missed as many tournaments due to injury as Wakataka Kage, like it's very clear that he is, just not the same guy that he was a year and a half. Sorry, no, that he was 2 years ago, because 2 years ago he was on the cusp of becoming Yokozuna. So, Kirishima, just get healthy and focus on, being able to, finish every tournament with a losing record. And much like Wakataka Kage, we'll check in on your Ozeki hopes back in up in next March.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The unfortunate thing from the last tournament, as we talked about, was that he had this very interesting run where he was getting really strong record and then weak record, really strong record, weak record, really strong, and then this past tournament he was supposed to do well again and he forgot to. So he broke his streak, and let's just hope he can kind of pick it up again. But it had been a very weird 2025 for Kirishima. I don't really know what he is anymore, honestly. But I just want to see good Kirishima again because good Kirishima is just great for sumo. He's so fun to watch when he's at his best.
Absolutely. Wakamoto Haru, I mean, well, this is probably right around where he is at this stage of his career. He's getting close to the end. He's 32. He's 32 now. So, like this is probably around where he, sort of belongs. So I don't expect him to really be contending for the U show, but he's always a threat to knock off someone in the Sanyaku. So Just because he's not a Sanyaku doesn't mean that he isn't dangerous to the guys who are.
Yep, and he had a win against Hakuoho and a win against Aonishki in the last tournaments. And Oho, so, he could be mowing down the Sanyaku this time around for all we know.
Hirata Umi, this is a guy that has back-to-back winning records from from the Joy area. So, maybe he'll have another one. Did have, some time at the end of 2024 as a Kamusabi and where he did fairly well. Like this is a guy that, is certainly capable of turning it on and just is very underrated, I'd say, and just extremely capable. He has two Kinboshi this year, so he certainly knows how to spring an upset. So, looking forward to seeing how he does. And now it's time to cue the music. That's right, it is the Ura Hour, and to our immense surprise, well, not really surprised, but just a surprise based on what had happened prior. He not only, did better than the tournament before when he got injured, he had a 10-5, which was his best win total since 2021 at any position. So clearly this guy is, having like a little like late renaissance almost, 18 wins over the last two tournaments. It better than what we've seen from the past like 3 years. So, and he did it with like almost straight sumo in the last tournament for some reason.
That's right. It was one of the odd things about the last tournament was there was very little unusual Ura highlight video footage. He wasn't flying around at the same rate, somersaults. He was relatively right side up for almost the entire tournament, which is very unusual. The somersaults tended to be saved for the losses, which is kind of his MO. But he had a really great tournament. I mean, double digit wins for the first time in 4 years is serious stuff. And it was kind of to be expected because he was at such a lower rank than he usually is. He was up against weaker competition than he's used to, and he can handle those guys. I mean, no problem. But now that he's back up to M3, I mean, if you look at his typical records from that position, 7, 8 wins would be kind of a ceiling for him here, and then drops back down, and he'll probably have a great tournament again. So he's just one of those guys who he's really good against the middle of the Banzuke, and then in the upper half, not so much.
Are you implying that Ura is going to be bouncing up and down this Banzuke?
Da 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 da. Maybe I'll
All
throw in some
right.
kind of sound effect there.
So moving on, we have Tamawashi, the like the Iron Man, and I mean there's nothing to say that hasn't been said about him for the better part of 50 years. I mean, he has a winning record and then a losing record, winning, losing, winning, losing. Just he's going to give everyone and anyone a run for their money, and just be on your toes because Tamawashi is very likely to beat almost anybody that he goes up against.
I love this
Uh,
guy. I love Tamawashi. I hope he does it again. It gets another 11-4 record like he did the last time he was at M4. That'd be amazing.
Uh, as our friend Sumo Spiffy so eloquently said a couple of months ago, Oshoma, is bleep. He's in a position where like, he's good, but he's not great. Maybe there's still room for him to ascend a little bit. He is in his prime now, so the sumo that we see from him, this year and next year might be the best sumo we see of his whole career. So if he's got any hopes of making like a persistent push in the Sanyaku, maybe this is where we'll see it.
Yeah, the
So
problem is there's a big difference between M4 where he's at now and M6 where he had a strong tournament not too long ago. The kind of opposition he's going to have in this tournament is way tougher. There's kind of that margin right at the M5, M6 area where you start not facing the entire Sanyaku all tournaments. Oshoma, he's going to have to face them all, and I think that's just going to be impossible for him. But probably what'll happen is he'll really struggle this tournament, he'll drop down, and then he'll be great again. He'll be back up. That's what we see with so many of these guys we've been talking about.
we're going to quickly wrap up the joy, and then we'll discuss Maegashira's 6 through 18 in our Kachi Clash picks and discussion. So first we have the newly minted Yoshino Fuji, the artist formerly known as Kusano. A lot of interesting perspectives on what he might be capable of in this Basho. He certainly underwhelmed with his performance back in September. Like an 8-7 is really not what we were, I think, expecting after that stellar 11-4 Jun show that he had, the tournament prior. Like he really just didn't seem to know what he was even doing for like the first week or so of the tournament. I mean, that 2-4 start was like mind blowing to me. So, and combined with the fact that he's, been hinting to having like an injury and maybe hasn't even been able to practice fully this past week. But then you've also got Chris Sumo saying that maybe him skipping the London tournament gives him like a bit of a edge by not having to do as much unnecessary travel and get like his proper training routine in. I don't really know what to expect from him next tournament. Like part of me thinks that he could bounce back, but another part of me thinks that, he could be, cruising for a bruising almost. What do you think?
I think that 'cause there's just too many guys that are all up and coming for them all to be truly on the ascent. It can't be Onishiki and Hakuoho and Hirado Umi and Wakamoto Haru coming back. Like someone is going to have to lose some of these matches. Um, from what I would say is that if he's been having some injury questions, then he's just simply more likely to have a losing record than some of these other guys around him that aren't in that situation. But all we're really talking about here is odds because we haven't seen him training specifically. So I wouldn't bet on him, but he could totally surprise us and have a really strong tournament. It's a tough position to do it from, though. M5 is really that's where it begins. That's where, you're up against all the very best, and you're kind of just a cannon fodder for the Sanyaku. So I'm not picking him for Kachi Clash, is what I'd say. But I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up coming back around, getting 10 wins, something like that. No more than 10 wins. I don't see him in the Yusho race yet.
Yeah, same here. Yoshino Fuji, like he certainly has the skill, but like I'd kind of like to stop saying that and start seeing it?
Yeah, totally.
And rounding out the joy, we have Shodai, the former Ozeki, who has, had a bit of a fall from grace, like back in 2022, 2023, he was very consistently in the joy, like all the time. He even was Ozeki, at the end of 2022, but now I think we're sort of starting to see the age catch up with him. I mean, he's had what is this? Yeah, three losing tournaments this year. His back-to-back winning records have both come from, the Maegashira teens, so to speak. Now that he's jumped all the way up from Maegashira 11 to Maegashira 5, I mean, I just don't know. I mean, he this time around last year he had a 10-5 record from Maegashira 4, so maybe he'll do the same, but this year he was in around the same spot and went just 6-9. Like he is, in my opinion, one of the most confusing wrestlers to really predict. Like
Yeah.
he can beat anybody and he can lose to literally anybody. I just don't know what his deal is.
Well, I think it's for guys of the quality of Shodai historically, I think the drop off tends to be a lot slower than someone who is a flash in the pan and then just loses it. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing is that, he hasn't completely lost his ability. I mean, he's got so much in his sumo brain to win matches, even if, the body is slowing down. So naturally, his average position is going down, I think is what we're seeing. But when he's up against weaker opposition, like he can handle it. And that's what we saw in the last tournament. That's why I picked him for Kachi Clash. And it was right to do so because he ended up getting 10 wins and being one of the strongest competitors of that portion of the Banzuke. Now that he's at M5, I don't recommend anyone do that. I don't see him having a strong tournament from that position. So, it's that's kind of what we're gonna see. He's gonna be probably in a similar territory to Ura over the next several tournaments. Where when he's in the high M's, he's gonna struggle. When he's in the low M's, he's gonna have a good tournament. And then, unfortunately, what happens to us all is it'll just continue to drop. I think progressively over time. But then again. In 6 years, he could still be doing it like Tamawashi is right now. Who's to say? That's just kind of what I've been observing in the last year or two.
Fair enough. And with the joy discussion now done, it is time for us to move on to our Kachi Clash picks. All right, so I can, see the decisions that you've made, and I kind of feel that just based on our discussion, we're very much on the same wavelength as far as who the favorites for most of the tournament are going to be. But
Yeah,
we'll just quickly run through them. I mean, Onosato, we've said everything there is to say. He is consistent, he is dominant. Three tournaments this year. He has won five of the last nine. They're the only person maybe on the whole Banzuke that can truly challenge him for a Yusho when he's healthy is Hoshoryu. And I just think Onosato is better right now. So that's why he's my pick.
yeah, and I mean, I have no doubt that Hoshoryu could win a tournament or could have a better record than Onosato in this tournament. It's just simply a statistical, you know, educated guess. I mean, if you want to go the psychology route, you could say that Hoshoryu is due for a better tournament than Onosato. If you believe in due, um, I'm just going by the fact that if you look at the last several, Onosato's been better. But I think it's also there's a strategic pick in picking Hoshoryu because there are fewer people who picked him. So if he does have a better tournament, you have a better odds of winning Kachi Clash. So that's another way of doing it. I'm just going with Onosato. I've always picked him. I picked him probably every tournament for the last 2 years. So I'm just going to keep that going. Last time I was a fool and I did not pick Onishiki. I'm changing that now. I got him. Probably every single other person playing Kachi Clash has him as well. Is there anyone else in that group that you think might be a sleeper pick?
I mean, I also agree. I think that Onishiki will have a larger percentage. I think that he'll have a larger percentage of picks at his sector than Onosato will.
Yeah, because at least with Onosato and Hoshoryu, like there are plenty of Hoshoryu stands that would just will pick him over Onosato every time. With Aonishiki, I don't think anyone is enough of a fan of Oho Takayasu or Takanosho to want to risk tanking their Kachi Clash by picking them when you have Onishiki right there.
Yeah, exactly. There just isn't enough evidence that Oho, Takanosho, and Takayasu can have a better tournament than Onishiki is likely to have, even if Onishiki has a step back. So, Onishiki is the pick. He's probably I know he's your pick, and if you're listening to slash watching this right now, it's probably your pick as well. So let's move on. I went with Kirishima. Like, I think it's really kind of a split between him and Wakataka Kage. I think, he's had his back-to-back, Mr. Hyde tournaments. I think he's due to bring back Dr. Jekyll. I think that, maybe we'll see like 10 or 11 wins from him this tournament as the first week will probably be a bit rough, but the second week will be a lot more chill. If he's at like around 500, maybe he'll just have like a late surge where he manages to finish, like 11-4 or something. So that's kind of my mindset with Kirishima heading into this one.
Yeah, when it comes to picking the Maegashira 1 through 5 pick, it's very different than picking some of the others. With this region, I always just go based on who gives me the most confidence in beating the toughest opposition, in beating guys that are in the Sanyaku. And when I look at the list here, I mean, the only people who I see as being capable of getting winning records when they're facing so much Sanyaku are probably Wakataka Kage. Wakamoto Haru at one point was that guy, but he's kind of lost that ability now, so I certainly wouldn't trust him with that pick. And Hakuoho, we don't really have enough evidence to say he can handle the seven guys ahead of him right now, but he could. It's absolutely possible that Hakuoho could get a winning record. Kirishima, we know, has done it. He has wins against every single one of those guys. If he's able to just, you know, bring it this time, we know he's capable of that. So that's why I thought that was probably the safest pick there. But he's been very unpredictable recently, so this one could totally end up tanking my team as well. But we'll see. And then I kind of explained why I was going with Abi in the next section before. A lot of these guys we didn't really touch on yet, so we could just go through some of them. I mean, Atami Fuji has been very, very unpredictable, really. Like since his first two tournaments in the Makuuchi division, he's been completely unpredictable. And I think it's it's very risky to ever pick him for Kachi Clash because you just don't know which Atami Fuji you're getting in each tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and even if we go purely statistically, like statistically speaking, you're probably not getting the best version of him anyway. Like, yeah, he did have, that 11-4 from Maegashira 10, but he also had an 8-7 from Maegashira 12. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's not like the lower you go, he's guaranteed to give you a great performance.
No, it's
So
very unpredictable. Like what makes him suddenly have a much stronger tournament than another? It's so hard to do. When it comes to guessing games like this, I can't pick a Tommy Fuji these days. So, yeah, that was one. I mean, as far as the rest, these are guys who are just kind of perennially in this area of the Banzuke, whereas Abi is the one who really stands out as being underranked. The exception is Daisho, who I picked in the last tournament, thinking he is so underranked, he's got to have a strong showing, and he was weak. I mean, he was so not Daisho. And so that I don't know, maybe this time around he'll be himself again. Maybe he was still nursing the injury that kept him out in July when he was on his Ozeki run. But as of right now, I see Abi in this zone for the first time in ages, and I'm thinking he's got to be the guy. That said, though, I don't want to have to split the prize with anyone watching. So if you're feeling confident Daisho, or you want to go for Midori Fuji, get a little wild, go with Koto Shoujo. Hey, he did just win a Yusho recently. Feel free to, and I'll just stick with Abi myself, and the prize will be all mine.
yeah, I mean, it is also worth mentioning Kota Shoho. I mean, he is just 4 months removed from winning a tournament, and a fairly impressive tournament from right around well, I shouldn't say right around the same area. I mean, yeah, he's gonna face a lot of guys, that he also fought back in July. But, like I really feel that was just a case of him, sort of being the one to capitalize on just sheer chaos at the top half of the Bonds case. So, he could certainly have, 9 to 10 wins, but I just don't feel as confident in him as I am with Abi, maybe even Daisho or Kinbozan. I'll just quickly run through the names real quick. You've got Chirano Umi. He's a guy that has a lot of experience in like this sector, but isn't really too reliable in sort of pushing himself. The same goes for Ichi Yamamoto, who is my least favorite wrestler to watch, I'd say,
Why
which
is
is the
that?
opposite. He just has a very ugly style of sumo where he just sort of he always tries to anticipate when his opponent is going to charge and tries to get there before the hands are down. He's very much a wannabe Abi, but without the skill. And he also hankas a lot, which I don't like. Um, just moving, so skipping past, keep staying in the east. We've got Midori Fuji, who is always fascinating. He's always the David to everyone else Goliath. So fun guy to watch. On the west side, you've got Onokatsu, who, certainly someone who's capable of some really stellar sumo. Abi as well, who we've discussed. Kinbozan, who I believe was in the Yusho playoff earlier this year. So a guy that we know is capable of getting 10 to 12 wins at times. Tobizaru, the flying monkey, who Hiro Morita just cannot stop calling him that. Like, he doesn't even call him Tobizaru anymore. He simply calls him the flying monkey.
And
Sorry.
Tobizaru is someone else like Atami Fuji who it's very hard to see the pattern of when he's going to have a good tournament or not. At the M8 position recently, he had a 10 and 5 record, and the time before that he was in that role, he had a 4 and 11 record against a lot of the same opposition. So as far as Kachi Clash goes, I always find it very tough to pick Tobizaru, but it's absolutely possible that he'll end up shooting back up into the joy after this tournament.
Yeah, he certainly can, especially if he's able to, get some shenanigans going. And we've got Koto Shoho, who we spoke about. So of those 10, I personally like Abi the most. Daisho, maybe this is the tournament that he bounces back. Kinbozan also has some appeal to him. So, I'd say that's probably my power ranking for this area. Everybody else is just too unpredictable for me.
And then in the last zone, we have a bunch of names here, people that we've talked about sometimes at length and sometimes we just don't really make the time for. Shishi, who Had a really strong tournament in the last one. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't pick him, but I probably should have. But that was a pretty great run with the 10-5 record.
Yeah,
What do you
10
think?
and 5. I mean, it feels like it's a little bit too late in his career for him to really take like the next step, so to speak. Like I think that, whatever his sumo future is will probably be like, maybe the Maegashira like single digits, which he has yet to achieve. So, good luck to him. I just don't know if like he is surrounded by guys that can probably kick his butt. Like Daisho, Kota Shoho, Fujinokawa, like, those guys just above and below him are guys that can probably, that would probably go like 3-0 against him. So, just good luck to him, and I hope he's able to have another strong tournament.
Yeah, last
Speaking
time
of,
he was at this ranking, he went 4-11. So
yeah,
not a great pick from this spot, but once he drops back down, who knows?
we've got Fujinokawa, who he was Waka Ikari if I'm
Yes,
not
that's
mistaken.
correct.
Yeah, sorry. It's gonna take some time to get used to that. Yep, he's a guy that could have another strong tournament.
Yeah.
He is still just a little bit, smaller and younger, so he's got some growing to do, in more ways than one. So excited to see if he can bounce back after a disappointing 6-9. We have Gonoyama, who probably the most surprising, like, non-pullout of last tournament. I mean,
Yes.
1-14 without any injury report. Like, unless he outright hid an injury, like, I think like, Gonoyama is my Kachi Clash pick here. I think that he is way better than this rank indicates, provided that he's not injured. Maybe like something comes out before the tournament that he has been nursing an injury. If that happens, I'll switch up my picks real fast. But like he's really, really good when he falls below like the high levels, so I'm willing to take a flyer on him.
And you're not the only one. I like looking at people's picks before the picks are made. Sometimes I want to do something that's a little bit against the grain. Gonoyama is a very popular pick right now for this upcoming tournament, and it's not something you often see from someone who's coming off of a 1-14. But I think it's because something about that 1-14 just was fishy, and obviously the opposition he has in this tournament is going to be completely different than who he lost to in the last one. So if there's a belief, if you look at his history of how he fares against the wrestlers he's likely to face this time around, it makes sense. But of course, the injury is the scary part for anyone who's picking him.
So just to quickly go through some guys I don't have quite as much to say on. We have Ryuden, we have Nishiki Fuji, who is back after some time in Juryo. I'll get to Oshoumi in a second. But we have Chiyoshoma and Meisei, guys that are just very injury prone. On the west side, you have Roga, Tomokazi, and Mitakeumi, guys that are capable of winning records, but are maybe past the point where they can make real noise. Same goes for Toki Hayate, Shonanaumi, Sadanumi, and Asakoryu. Those are all guys that are, probably exactly where they belong right now, where they, are maybe capable of winning 8 or 9 wins down here, but also capable of going like,
Three and
7,
12.
8, yeah, 3-12, 4-11, 5-10, 6-9. Like
Yeah.
anything can happen with any of those guys on the West. But the one guy that is worth talking about on the East is Oshoumi. I mean, he is the newcomer, and while he is sort of maybe a bit of an older newcomer compared to some of the recent ones, like he hails from the Naruto stable, so we know that he's very well coached. He's had, what is this, 5 straight winning records in tournaments that he's competed in to completion. Like this could be a case where he's, one of those newcomers that has a really strong tournament when he makes his debut. That hasn't been the case recently. Like last tournament, it was Hitoshi, and the tournament before that we didn't have. Sorry, the tournament before that though, we had Koto Eho balancing out the stellar jobs from Kusano and Fujinokawa. So we've had like about we're batting about 500 as far as newcomers to to sumo this year. So maybe this is the tournament where our newcomer actually, shines through a little bit.
Yeah, it's so hard with picking in this section because I mean the reason that they're down here is because they're one bad tournament away from dropping down to Juryo. I didn't feel really strongly about anyone who I felt was underranked in that area and due to have a great tournament. So I see Oshoumi, and he's had some moderate success against guys that he's going to be facing in this tournament. In recent tournaments, he's had wins against Nishiki Fuji, Ryuden, Mitakeumi, Shishi. So I see that and I think, okay, well, he's going to be new to a lot of these guys as well, guys who he's never faced, and that could potentially be to his advantage. We've seen that happen before, guys who are new and just their style. It takes an adaptation for some of the lower ranked wrestlers. So I see it as just as likely that it could end up getting a winning record as not. But I didn't really have a strong feeling about anyone else. The only one that I think is a more popular pick than Gonoyama would be Oshoumi, or maybe Fujinokawa people are going with because he just seems to have a very high ceiling. So those are probably the three most popular picks. I'm going with Oshoumi, but it's not a very confident one. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to unconfidently go with Gonoyama. Maybe at the last minute I'll switch it up to one of those other two guys you mentioned, but just right now my gut kind of says that Gonoyama feels sort of due for a turnaround. I'm not saying Yusho, but like, 9 to 10 wins really feels like something that he's extremely capable of right now. So that's where I'm at as far as this tournament, and I think that about wraps up our preview of the Kyushu 2025 tournament.
But wait, if you want to compete against us in Kachi Clash, there are still spaces available in the New to Sumo podcast. Heya, just drop your username below. Make sure you already have an account and have some picks. Drop your username and we'll add you to the group. Right now, there are still spaces available and you can compete against us.
That's right. We look forward to competing against you. Maybe one day one of you will be good enough to surpass one of us in the Banzuke, though
Hasn't happened
unlike
yet, but it will
hasn't
someday.
happened yet, and I will do my best to ensure that does not happen. But for now, we're going to call it right there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in for this preview episode. And we do have a special surprise for you all at coming up in our wrap up of the next tournament. We are very excited to surprise you with it when the time comes.
Yeah,
So
make sure that you are hitting the refresh button on your subscriptions every minute after the next tournament until you see this video. You're not going to want to miss this one.
absolutely. And with that, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will catch up with you guys after the tournament. Please enjoy, everyone.
New to sumo, here we go.